Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to our video for sixth grade topic 6 review for our topic 6 test, or for anyone who happens to be studying percentages, fractions, decimals, and conversions. Okay, so what we want to do is go over each of these questions on the review and prepare you for the test. And I will end up splitting this into probably a couple of videos so they don't get too long. Before we start, some helpful hints that might help you in this chapter is this, okay? And I would write these down somewhere because we're going to end up using them to help us out as we go through. So a lot of this chapter is based upon the percent proportion, this is called. What it means is that you have two fractions and they are equal to each other, but there's some hints that will help us along. So some of the questions we can use the words is and of to help us place the numbers in the proportion, and the percentage sign, looking for which one is the percent. In some of them, that are like some of the longer story problems, we're going to use this kind of situation. Our percent and our 100 are still the same, but we're looking for like a new amount and an original amount over here on the left side. Or sometimes we're looking for the part and the whole in some of the story problems. So this one right here, you can really use for all of the problems, part and whole, and the percentage over 100. But sometimes it's difficult to know what's the part and what's the whole. So write those down, and here we go. Okay, so let's start with number one. Number one says this: Tracy is reading a novel for her English class. She shaded a grid right here to show how much of the book she has read so far. What percent of the grid is shaded? So most of us are familiar. This is the 100 square, and each line is worth 10, right? So instead of counting each individual square, we can count by tens here. If you want, you can count every single one. But this means we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 squares are shaded, right? So 60 out of 100 squares are shaded. And so you can either look here and recognize that that is 60%. If you were unsure, you could divide those two. What you're really trying to do to make a percentage is you would divide 60 divided by 100, and that would give you the decimal of 0.6. That's our decimal. So here's our fraction. This is how we change it to a decimal. Is we would, oops, sorry, that's an L, not a T, decimal. So what I did in my head, because I'm a math teacher and I know it, 60 divided by 100 would give you 0.6. And then if you wanted to change that to a fraction, you would multiply that decimal now by 100, because 100 is the percentage that is the whole, right? So if you times that by 100, our percentage would give us 60%. Okay, and so that's something that we want. And in this case, it asks you for the percent, so it is 60. Okay, next question. This next question is where we're gonna use our first helpful hint. So there's no 100 square, and it has a decimal already, which is where some kids get confused. But it says, what is 0.85% of 20? Okay, so in these short little questions where it's asking you the percentage of a number, you can use, this is where you can use this, or you can really use the part over the whole. So this is the percentage, right, of 20, which would be of a whole number of 20. Now, the little acronym, or the cheat, I guess you could say, is you can use the words here in these short ones to decide what goes where. So first thing that I show my students to do is you want to make what's called your proportion. You know there's going to be two fractions equal to each other. Now, I always tell my students to stay consistent. We're going to put 100 in. 100 always goes in these percentage questions because 100 is the whole 100%. Then I tell my students to look for the percentage symbol. If you have a percentage symbol, that is automatically going to go above your 100. So I don't need to put the symbol. I'm just going to put the number 0.85 there. And then there's usually one other number. And in this case, it's 20. So a lot of times math teachers will teach you this part, right? And it's this is really correct, the part over the whole, but is 20 a part or a whole? And so of 20 is the word of right here is indicating that it is the whole, okay? And so I need you to know that this and this are really the same, but we're using the words to help us out, okay? So of 20 puts 20 at the bottom here of the fraction. Now, 1 is missing in this case, and so we use the letter X. You can actually use whatever letter you want to. A lot of times we use X to show that we're trying to figure that number out. Okay, now what is actually happening here is this is equal to this. So 20 times what number would give you 100? So some of you know that and some of you don't, right? The answer really here is 5. So that would mean I would have to multiply the top by 5. Now, many of you, so X times 5 is 0.85. And so we still struggle to figure out how to do that. So another way that has been successful in our classes is to show that actually, if I multiply 20 times 0.85, if I cross multiply, it's called, it's really equal to if I were to multiply whatever that number is times that 100. These are equal. So what we would do is we multiply the two that we can multiply. We can't multiply X times 100 because we don't know what X is, but we can get an answer for 20 times 0.85. So if you do that, and I know the students in the 6th grade class here they're going to have a calculator, so you can do that in a calculator, or you could do it out. But 20 times 0.85, you should get 17. So that's what this bubble is. So what's really happening now is you're saying 100 times this number, we don't know what it is 17. So now it's saying, what is that number? What would I multiply 100 by to get 17? So you can guess and check, or you can do the math and say, okay, I'm gonna say, all right, if I divide this 100, if I divide this out, the opposite of timesing is dividing, right? I want to undo that times. I can cancel it here and I can get it over here, okay? And this is going to give me the answer. So I'm going to do 17, the number I got from multiplying here, divided by 100. And I will get that answer here. So 0.17 is the answer. And so here we have it right there. So that was a long way of showing you the way to do this, but I want you to make sure you know what these steps are and what they mean before we start cutting things out. Because some of you are saying, Miss Richards, you know what? I can see I could have just multiplied that and divided by that 100 because it was the odd one out. Yes, you can. You can cross multiply and divide by the odd one out, and you don't have to do this step once you know what it means. Okay, let's keep on going here. Next one, number 3. Select all the expressions that are equivalent to 40% of 90. So again, when we're using these percentages, we're using this idea of part over whole equals percent over 100. And so now this is not really a story problem that's, like the next one. So we can use this up here if we want, or we can use this, part over whole equals percent over 100. So automatically, we're going to put in 100. Now, the two numbers we have are 40%, right? And 90. Okay, so 40 has a percentage sign on it. So the percentage sign, no matter what method you use, is going to go above the 100. Now, the question is, where does 90 go? So is 90 the part or the whole? Well, I just told you a little bit earlier that this word of indicates whole, and whole is at the bottom. So we're going to put 90 at the bottom, and that missing space is going to be x. Okay, so again, we're going to use the same method. So what two numbers can I multiply? So let's look. Can I multiply x and 100, or can I multiply 90 and 40? I can multiply 90 times 40. I can either do that in my head for many of us, or you can use a calculator. So 90 times 40, well, 9 times 4 is 36, and then you have 2 zeros, so that is 3,600. And then really, right? And again, you have 100 times x is really equal to 3,600. That's really what you have. And so what happens now is to get that 100 out of there, we have to divide it out. So we're going to divide that answer by 100. This is what's really happening mathematically. Okay, you're dividing both sides by 100. Well, 3,600 divided by 100 is going to give us 36. Okay, so that is for sure an answer. Here's a hint. It says select all that are equivalent to 40% of 90. All right, so we know it's not 72, right? How do I get 4/5 times 9? Well, those of you that are in the math classes here, you have a calculator. If you don't, then you're going to have to do this by hand. But you can type in 4/5 or 4 divided by 5, either way, times 90. And that one says it's 72. So that's not it. We know we got to get 36. Okay, let's try this one. 40 over 100, or 40 divided by 100. That's what all that means. And then divided again by 90. Nope, not that. Okay, so let's see if the last one gives us 36. 2/5, or 2 divided by 5, that's what this little symbol means, times 90. 36, so that one also equals 36. So you want to make sure on questions like this that you select all. And sometimes they trick you and there's only one, but you should probably check. Okay, so we're going to stop this first video right here so it doesn't get too long. If you need help with the next section, watch the next video.